So, a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome back to the fourth session of our faculty development program, Envisioning the Future Multidisciplinary Approaches in Research on Languages and Literature. We are excited to continue this journey of multidisciplinary exploration and learning. Today, we have with us Dr. Prasannanshu, Professor of English at National Law University, Delhi, and it is my great pleasure to introduce such a distinguished scholar with an extensive academic background in law, language, linguistics, and communication. His work bridges the gap between the law and the humanities, particularly focusing on clinical linguistics, neurolinguistics, and endangered languages. He has authored several papers and co-authored books, including on the intersection of law and literature, and has contributed to the development of courses that merge these fields, enhancing legal education with a deeper understanding of language and communication skill. Dr. Prasannanshu's academic journey includes prestigious fellowships such as Erasmus Mundus Scholarship, and he has delivered lectures at renowned universities worldwide, including Université Paris-Nanterre and University of Edinburgh. He has also played a key role in significant research projects, notably those focused on indigenous language and language preservation. His involvement in the Center for Linguistic Justice and Endangered Languages at National Law University, Delhi, has helped to bring important attention in linguistic diversity and its intersection with legal system. Today, Sir will lead us through a session on inherent multidisciplinarity in language and literature research, the context of legal scholarship, exploring the essential role of language and literature in shaping and understanding legal framework. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Prasannanshu, sir, for this fascinating session.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the very kind introduction, Dr. Puna.
Thank you, sir.
I see that there are around 43 participants, so I request all of them to please turn on their cameras. And I would really like it if it is interactive. You can even start with a question, or I can start and please feel free to contribute at whichever point you feel like. Thank you very much for turning on the cameras. I think everyone is a teacher here, and you know the horror of a class which is invisible. We have all passed through this stage during the pandemic. So thanks for your empathy. The topic that I plan to talk on today is multidisciplinary approaches in research on language and literatures. So this thing appears very obvious to me that language and literature are ab initio, means from the very beginning, inherently and by nature multidisciplinary. What is this multidisciplinarity? Multidisciplinary means something which is not restricted to a narrow focused area of knowledge, but something that spans across fields of knowledge, fields of specialization, fields of learning, fields of interest. We can keep adding these qualifiers. So this is the basic nature of literature and language for me. Maybe we can start with tracing the history of learning. Basically we are talking of, maybe we can take the paradigm of the Western education, Western knowledge systems, Western learning. So it all started with the universities around 1,000 years ago. So that is the history of universities, and knowledge was divided into humanities, basically started with divinities and humanities. So humanities are the things are the topics, concepts that are concerned with the human beings. And nowadays, coming up, traveling all these 1,000 years or more, well, that's a very rough thing I have said. I have talked about the history of universities, but before that, I am not implying that there was nothing like knowledge. There was not a knowledge system. There was not a system of education. It was there. But ultimately, this is roughly what happened, that the study of things concerning human beings was bundled into one category, whether by name or otherwise. And this category dealt with all knowledge, and it was in the form of stories, in the form of literature, in the form of different genres came up with time, poetry, epics, they all came with time. So it was ultimately literature in which all knowledge was represented, it was depicted, stored, transmitted. So that is the beginning point from where I would like to start. This is how literature has become so important. That is how literature is inherently multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, polydisciplinary, etc. Literature encompasses knowledge of all fields. Literature is something that does not restrict itself to any one single particular field. And that is why, like, the highest degree is generally Doctor of Literature, DLit. So, what is the meaning of that degree? That whether you want to study medicine, you want to study law, engineering, the final degree is DLit. It is about literature. But there, I think I am misusing the word a bit. It's about literature of that particular field. There is some focus still there, but it should not be there. I don't think that in the philosophy of these degrees, this distinction is there. So, this is how we have to approach the study of literature and language. Literature and language are intertwined. They are not the same thing, but they are also not different. They are different in the way that language deals with only the medium in the strictest possible sense in which literature is written. And literature cannot exist without language. This is very clear. We can argue that by cave paintings, by other means, by cartoons, you may have literature, but well, I am talking about the bare minimals. So, language is the medium of literature through which, and language is not a dead entity. It's not a clinical or a mechanical entity. Language is a living entity. Language, on the one hand, has intersections with culture, and on the other, with literature. Now, language, literature, culture, and religion, perhaps they form a complete circle, and it is very difficult to separate all the four. From different perspectives, they appear same, similar, or intersecting. For example, when we study literature, language, and culture, then whether culture is language or whether language is culture, this is a question which is very valid, which is a matter of debate, because I can give you an example. In India, we have linguistic states. And what are these linguistic states? Why do we have linguistic states? I don't think that the focus was language. Focus of, or this is only a mechanism of creating states based upon regional cultures. And what is the clearest mechanism of doing that? To identify languages, because culture is a more abstract entity. That is why linguistic states was a clear and easier way out. So, after saying this, I would again come back to language and literature and the inherent multidisciplinarity in them and their research. Research is something we can deal with towards the end, but if we understand the nature of these fields, then research becomes an obvious outcome of that. After establishing that all fields of study ultimately have something to do with language and literature, I would like to focus upon some fields, for example, law. So, law is something that is intricately associated with language and literature, both of them. Maybe I can tell you a few things like law starts or practice of law starts with language at all stages. Maybe I can give a small outline like as an advocate, you start with client counseling. What is client counseling? That is meeting the client, talking to them, knowing their problem, trying to understand it, and trying to tell them what the possible outcomes can be, what their rights are. That is client counseling. It takes place in language. The next stage is drafting. That is again in language. Drafting can be drafting of a client, drafting of a contract. Another way or another thing that we are aware of is the arguments in the court. They are also in language, cross examination, examination in chief, and the next level will be writing the judgment. Another level will be drafting of the laws. So all these things, as we are witnessing, they are taking place in language. And drafting of the laws takes place, maybe we can start with the law commission. From the law commission, the draft is where the draft is made, then they are argued in the legislature. So in all these stages, we would realize that what we are doing is we are dealing with language. So language is a very, very important. Someone wants to say something? Maybe it's just okay. So language is something which is inseparable from law. Some authors have even said that law is language. It is so closely associated. They almost appear as one and the same thing. I also know personally that if someone knows, many English teachers are in demand by lawyers. They say that you help us, you join us. Why? Because the most important part of the practice of law is language. If someone is very good with language, they certainly have an advantage. Basic understanding of law and its application in language. That is what is required. I will, from this point, if there are any questions, I would be very happy. Otherwise, I will go with some elaborations, some examples. Anyone? Please feel free. You are all colleagues. I don't want to lecture you. I am not lecturing. I am talking to you. So talking means talking is a two-way process. So from this point, feel free to raise your hand. I would really appreciate it. From this point, I would also expand into the field of communication. So language is the medium, fine. It is a type of communication system. Language is only a type of communication system. I am repeating. Communication is verbal, non-verbal, paralinguistic. We are teaching as English and language teachers. And what is this verbal communication? This is made up of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So that is language. Language is a very recent development in human history. We have been communicating. All beings communicate. Even plants communicate. All insects, all living beings, they do communicate. What is the difference between human beings and other beings, especially mammals, which we see or perceive to be very similar to ourselves? The difference primarily is of language. like all the organ systems we share with other animals. But one thing is there, we have a very specialized language system and we keep working on it since our inception as a species, like what we are using today. We are using this Microsoft Teams app. This is a new innovation, and I was looking at it. I am using it after a gap. Generally, I am using other apps for online meetings. So I saw that there are a lot of features in it. For example, adjusting your image, backgrounds, and many, many more. So what we are doing, we are evolving. What we are trying to evolve communication. This is one of the latest things which has come up during our generation. What I am talking about, the online meetings. I don't think it was really possible, not at this scale. Perhaps over the phone, people experimented with meetings, but it was not possible this way. Or science might have been there for 50 years, 60 years or more, but technology was not there. And this way, what we are doing, we are enhancing our efficiency. We are doing something which no other species can do. Because whatever we do by communication, within the realm of communication. For example, we are discussing here basically how to do research, how to teach, and even how to think. And we are thinking together. So it is like parallel computers. Supercomputing, if some of you are aware of it or have interest in it, it is basically based upon parallel computing. Many small computers are put together. So our species has become something like a supercomputer. Individually, we may not be that powerful. Gener- For sure, we are not so powerful. We can't face a lion. But as a species, we are able to capture, tame, enslave, exploit, and do a lot of bad things to every other species. I am not saying that that has been the goal or that is a positive thing, but positive thing is we have been able to protect ourselves from the more powerful animals, elements of nature, etc. And again, coming back, how we have been able to do it? By language, by a very sophisticated, unique, advanced, and evolved system of communication. All species communicate, but they don't use language. They use like non-verbal communication and maybe something similar to paralinguistic communication. But we use all of them. But the bottom line remains that still our maximal communication takes place non-verbally and paralinguistically. Only a smaller amount of communication takes place verbally. And I am quoting, I think it was Bird Whistle who said, and in law schools and management schools, in communication classes, we are repeating it many a time without even understanding that 55% of communication takes place non-verbally, 38% paralinguistically, and 7% verbally. It is not accurate. It is quoted out of context, and Bird Whistle has also distanced himself from this, but it is indicative. This is a very good indicator that linguistic communication is important, but other forms of communication are still very, very important. This is something which we have to understand in the context of law also, because as I just decoded in front of you, law as a whole process ranging from legislation, from drafting to client counseling is a linguistic phenomenon. So we have to understand linguistic and communication, or you can say linguistic communication is a phenomenon or process of linguistic communication and other forms of communication also. They cannot be separated. One can become an effective advocate only if they are able to master different aspects of communication, especially linguistic communication. And they need to have a deep understanding of literature also. I will quote Or give the example of Cicero. Marcus Tullius Cicero was an advocate, earliest known advocate, and he was not even an advocate. That's a very interesting thing. I am saying he was an advocate and not an advocate. Why? Because at that time, around 1,000 years, 2,500, 2,000 years ago, there were no law schools. There were no universities. Forget about law universities. And he became an advocate. That's a strange thing. But he was an advocate. Why? Because he was defending his clients in legal matters in the courts, in the Roman courts. That is why he was an advocate. And he was such a successful advocate that many law schools, many literature classes talk about him across the globe, even now. So space and time, the two primary criteria of literature, are fulfilled by what he did in the court. He is known for his defense speeches, the speeches he delivered in the course of defending his clients. And these speeches are considered to be masterpieces of literature. So literature is not defined, not very restrictive that what is literature. Even a defense speech can be literature. I've just given this example. One of the best examples of his speeches in our context is pro Archaea. That is a defense speech delivered in the defense of Archaeas. And Archaeas was his teacher. Some of you must be aware of what I am saying. Dr. Poonam, I think, has heard it from me. So Archaeas was his teacher, and again, the very formal system of schools and colleges was not there. So what type of a teacher he was? He was a tutor. And tutor of what? The main focus of education, as I started my talk with, is literature. So that is what he was teaching. And Archaeas himself was a poet. So he taught him different aspects of literature, including poetry. In this speech, I recommend it to all of the colleagues here that please have a look at this defense speech pro Archaeas. You can find it easily with translations on the net. So Cicero was such a great advocate that he was able to defend his client. And this was not even a client, it was a very personal case. He was thankful to his teacher for all the contribution he had in his career. And he wanted to defend him. That was one aspect. So I don't think he was charging any fees from him. And the second aspect is that it was a very sensational, politically charged case, and it would have added to his reputation or marred it. So it was an important case for him. But he was such a skillful advocate or lawyer that he was able to defend his teacher Archias within a few paragraphs, if we want to measure the length of the speech in paragraphs, because we have the written text. And a major part, something like 2/3 of the speech, was on the defense of literature. I do not really know why he spent so much time on literature. One of the theories can be that he was so appreciative of literature, which made him the lawyer. Now we have forgotten this, that for being a lawyer, literature is so important. And in those days, literature was the main means of educating people. Even now it should be. And wherever it is ignored, it has very dangerous outcomes, because education is not for developing or creating only robotic beings. It is for developing human beings. It is for making people realize their full potential as human beings. which we call in other cliched words as developing a well-rounded personality. So that is the role of literature, and that is why literature is an important part in all education, in all forms of education. Okay. Fine. That is why literature is important, and that can be one of the reasons that as an expression of thanks, he was talking about his teacher and about literature. And secondly, within the speech, we can see that the structure of the speech is such that he wanted to give value to the teacher, that he is a great poet and poetry is important. That can be the other reason why he was talking so much about literature. So all said and done, it's a masterpiece which is truly interdisciplinary between law and literature. I think that suits our discussion very well today. Again, we are at around the midpoint of this talk, and I invite people again for sharing their views. Oh, Dr. Ardha,
Yes.
yes, please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Okay,
Sir,
welcome.
I've got a very simple question. I just have been wondering about this for a while now. And you are talking about the language and law, right? So, language, generic language, like the human language that we use, it functions on its own logic. And the legal language functions on a more rational perspective. So, legal language performs some sort of objectivity as well, right? While they within the discourse of law. So, what I wanted to understand that is there a particular politics behind the language of law that is there, which focuses more on objectivity, nullifying the emotional and subjective, or like reflective elements? Because whenever I try to read something that caters to the discourse of law, I fall short. I hardly understand it or perceive it because of my limitation of knowledge in all probability. But then again, I believe that is there a way to go about it? And one more question, which is an associated question, is that
I think you
uh,
already have asked a lot of questions. Please
yeah, yeah,
ask
yeah.
one by one. I am not able to retain so many questions. Is it
So the
okay if I start answering a few of the
yes,
questions
yes,
you have
yes,
asked?
yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Yes.
Uh, I think got a snatches of some words like politics of language.
Uh-huh.
Okay, perhaps I will remember only this thing. Then you can ask second thing, third thing.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
So certainly politics is a part of human behavior, human existence, human reality. So is language. And that is why language and politics will be seen everywhere. And they are interconnected also in all forms of language. And in this country, we know that language plays a very, very powerful, important, significant, defining role in politics, like formation of the states. That's one thing. And this process is not something that happened at a point in our history. Like recently, you had Telangana, right? And there are many more movements. I am aware of them personally. Some people even contact me for helping them make their languages as national languages, Schedule 8 languages, not national languages, Schedule 8
Okay.
languages. Thankfully, we don't have a national language. So, so politics is there. And second question was something about your language of law that we are not able to
Ha,
read
the
it.
legal language, sir, which is
So,
more
see,
objective
there
in
is a
nature.
concept of registers. There are several registers in a language, any given language. And when I'm talking about language, I'm talking about a human reality. I'm not talking about Bangla, Tamil, Telugu, etc., or Hindi or English. Language is a human reality. This is the first and most fundamental principle of modern linguistics. So, as human beings, we have a biological endowment that is known as language. It is inherent, it is innate, and you can say then how would we deal with these different languages? We have thousands of languages in India, by some estimates 1800 to 2000. Well, the differences are minor, they are superficial. For example, the differences between different human beings are superficial, like color of the skin. But if you look at the genes, maybe we have not developed sufficiently sophisticated detection techniques for finding out significant differences between people of one country and another country or continent, right? So differences are visible, they are spectacular, but still the similarities which are not so visible, they are much deeper, profound, and massive. The differences are only a few. Like between human beings, how many differences can you mention? Maybe we will stop at color, maybe features. What else can you say? Length of nose,
Yeah.
maybe the texture of hair. After that, what? It's very difficult, maybe 5 to 10 things. But if you start pointing out the similarities, it is unending list. Likewise for languages, our languages have 99.99 similarity similarity or some such spectacular similarity. I'm not quoting anything, any research. But the differences are superficial. Like in words, vocabulary. Vocabulary um, is the most superficial thing. It is most arbitrary because we can coin words. We can decide to them to have some meaning. Like in English, we call it a cup. And if two of us decide that we are roommates, suppose, and we decide we will call it puck, it will work for us. It's language.
Yeah, it will.
So likewise, in every profession, including law, there are registers when people decide to have common vocabulary, which can explain very specific concepts which are not maybe used in other fields. So this is how that register develops. And if you misuse it, it becomes a jargon. There is a use of this terminology and abuse of it. Use is that it will be very easy. Suppose both of us are working in the same field. If we develop, and you can add this logic. Suppose there are 50 people working in the same field, or 5 million people. That's also a small fraction of humanity. They can have, so I think there must be 5 million English teachers in the world. So they can have their own words. For example, eco-criticism. If you mention this word to any or any, I don't like the word layperson, but anyway, layperson, they get. We are all laypersons, but
Yeah.
so they will be really impressed or flabbergasted or whatever, but it's out of the range of normal. So likewise, every profession has their own words, and these words help them. But in the case of law, it is notorious, and people suspect, and there are research articles on it, and I have also conducted extensive research on it, that lawyers use these terms so that people don't understand, others don't understand, because once they understand what they are doing, the exorbitant fees will not be justified, right? And their monopoly will be broken. There, I read somewhere that some judges were surveyed, and they said even we don't understand what these lawyers are saying. It is difficult. It gives us a headache. So getting too deep into this register will make it a jargon, and the opposite movement of it is known as plain English movement or plain language movement. So this is what I have been propagating throughout my career, that it should be plain language. Plain language is nothing, we can't define it, but it is something which everyone can understand who is not in your field, who is not even in your profession. And it is also connected with the consumer rights and human rights, because who is the ultimate user of this language? That is the litigant. right? So your
Ah,
next batch of questions, sir.
not bad, sir. There's one more question I had.
Yes.
The thing is that it's like in your long career, you have come across a few literary texts as well, right? So, have you ever come across a literary text that beautifully uses this language of law, like quote unquote objective language of law, with the judicious use of jargon, and presents it beautifully for people like me? I mean, layperson, if we can put it like that.
So, well, beauty lies in the eye of the
Beholder, yes.
beholder. So I can't say whether it is beautiful or not, but read Bacon's essays, for example, on judicature. So to some it is
As a student, I
beautiful.
read a couple on,
Yeah.
yeah, so yes,
So to some it is beautiful with a lot of legal terminology, and to others it is horrifying.
Bacon is a good suggestion. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. So any other questions? I hope everyone enjoyed. I enjoyed the questions. Uh, all right. So we were trying to negotiate the multidisciplinary approaches on languages, literature, and I also included the concept of communication in that. So ultimately, the tri trioca, troika of language, literature, and communication is a very central human reality. It makes us human and it is characteristically human, right? I have been making a lot of such tall claims. So please challenge me so that I don't go unchecked. Anyway, so any field you want to connect it with, you can connect it, all three things, and they are interrelated from certain aspects. They are the same things, law, literature, and communication. And from another perspective, you can tweeze out the differences between the three. One field I have been mentioning, any other field you want to take up. And one example I will give. Uh, I say that anyone can come to me for a PhD. I don't even look at whether they are from the field of English literature, they are from linguistics, they are from management. At the moment, I have students. I am guiding students from management, from psychology, from neurolinguistics, from law, from uh, one is working on the Hindi Ramayana. So it is fine. One is working on the semiotics of films. So so that is the potential. Why I mentioned this, and perhaps the list is not exhaustive. Why I mentioned all this is because that is the potential of language. And I say that potentially, till now I have not been proven wrong. Anyone from any field can come. Once a school principal came to me and she was an MSc in chemistry. She wanted to do her PhD. I said, okay, I can give you a topic. You can work with me in an interdisciplinary field. And I can you imagine what topic a person of language and literature give to a specialist in chemistry? Let it be a small puzzle. And it took me less than 30 seconds. Usually it takes 20 seconds. So I gave her the topic of nomenclature of chemical compounds. So that's a linguistic phenomenon, isn't it so? It's something in the realm of language. How do we give names to different compounds? There is a system. So there is a linguistics of it. And I don't think much work has been done, especially in India in this field. So this can be done. We can connect these three things with everything. That is the midpoint that I would like to mention. Then again, I will come back to literature in a focused way. Like we can take up the example of Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. These are some of the things everyone is aware of. Although I can talk about different pieces of literature, but this is very spectacular. And especially a lot of us are English teachers, I believe. So especially at the school level, it is taught that Portia did great justice. So this is what I include in the syllabus for the law schools, and I asked them to discuss this, how great a justice was done. Maybe I will spend a few minutes on it so that we can look at literature as a teaching point for the concepts of law. Is it fine, madam? Okay. So,
So can we discuss as that Portia uh, didn't do justice?
sorry, I didn't get you. Can you please
Said,
repeat?
can we discuss it as that Portia didn't do justice?
Well,
Like
I
she
think
cheated Shylock, and
yes,
he
yes.
was the innocent being who
Mm,
caught up because he was not fluent with the language and he did
not
not put it thoroughly.
there are a lot of such literary pieces. Yes, that is true. That is certainly an aspect of it, but not the whole truth. We can take the example of The Silver Box by John Galsworthy. We can take the example of Tolstoy's, not Tolstoy, uh, Chekhov's A Malefactor, where because the person was not fully aware of language and the uh, linguistics of the courtroom, they suffered a lot. Even here, that is true. It is true even in this, but most spectacularly, I use this as an example to show that literature has discussed law. And in every form of literature, we see a lot of law in all languages. In movies, for example, what are movies? What are serials? They are always based upon literature. They are form of literature. They are a genre of literature. In journalism, everywhere we are talking about justice, law or justice. These two are different things. Law and justice are different things. So even in MOV, Merchant of Venice, perhaps law law was followed, not followed, that is one aspect. Whether justice was done or not, that's another aspect. Then the procedure of law. These three things are there. I hope everyone is from the background of English literature here, so they must have read Merchant of Venice. If there is someone who hasn't, we will quickly recount the story in brief. Well, I presume that everyone has some knowledge of it. So Portia is depicted as a great lawyer, a lawyer. That thing is also a fudge, but apparently she is a lawyer. So she starts as an impostress. She is misguiding the court, and she's posing to be someone else, which she is not. There are a lot of farcical things in that play. That is one thing that is about the techniques. But then the concepts of law are there. Many things that we can discuss. The farcical elements, well, everyone has left, I think. So, so there are works, well, I couldn't read it. Can you please mention it again? It's in the chat. I have to open it. Okay. People have been messaging. Mics are muted. Okay. Language is means of communication for all the subjects, not only to the legal system. Yes, I agree with that. Bhanu Prakash ji is saying, Dr. Rekha is saying, sir, are these works, are there works where due to the flaw in language, alternate interpretation of language, law is misinterpreted and the story takes a different turn? I think every single work is like that. Ultimately, what do you do in the courtroom? You discuss language. what is the meaning of the letters of the statutes, the acts, what's written there, what it means. In a vast majority of cases, we are discussing language, and that is what is depicted in the literature also. And even in this one, so ultimately, this is a very excellent example, Merchant of Venice. So ultimately, it's written in the contract that Shylock can take a pound of flesh. Now, Portia gives it a turn. She says he can take a pound of flesh, but no drop of blood should be spilled. So now this is a matter of interpretation of the words, because in language, there are a lot of phenomena, there are a lot of things like script is there. If anyone is from linguistics, schemas and script, the concept of schema and script is there. So whether it was used or not, I won't get into it. I don't think that's the focus area of your interest. But if it is, then please put a question there. I will talk about it. So it is understood. But what is understood, how much is understood, and how much is not understood, that is something debatable. So I will point out some of the main things in Merchant of Venice. One is that Shylock is addressed as Jew throughout the play. So that is a violation of human rights, human dignity, not to call him by his name, just by his religious, cultural, ethnic identity. Then the second is that it was a matter dealing with money, and mid-trial, it was turned into a criminal case, which is not possible these days. Why? Because procedural law makes it clear that you have to opt for civil proceedings or criminal proceedings. So mid-trial, you can't change. And I suspect that this particular writing or similar writings must have had influenced this part of procedural law. This is there. Then the difference between attempt to murder and murder is not clear there at all. Now, this has become a very important part of modern jurisprudence. So how it has come, I think lessons have been taken from such writings, from literature, because literature discusses the concept of justice ultimately in all its aspects. And what is law? Law is a tool or means of attaining justice. So law catches up with that, and we arrive at legal, different types of law, procedural law, substantive law, etc. And they are complementary to each other. They are not to attain justice. The right procedure is to be followed. If procedures are not followed, then it will become a summary trial, something without procedure, summary justice, which is not considered justice in the ordinary sense in positive law, right? So this is what was happening, and ultimately Shylock was tricked into giving up his property, his daughter, this we can discuss further, and also his religion. So there was a total violation of human rights there. That is what we see. And why it was and how it was achieved, because the processes of law were not well in place, including that Shylock was not being represented by an advocate. So now if we look at the Bar Council of India, its code of conduct, so it it provides for representation by an advocate. Why? So that even if you don't understand the language and the procedures of the court, you are not tricked into a Shylock type of situation, right? So I hope that Dr. Rekha is satisfied with this answer, because she has asked, are there works where due to the flaw in language? Thank you. There are so many other examples of literature where the concept of justice is discussed. For example, if we look at Tolstoy's God sees the truth but waits. I'm trying to take up the pieces of literature which everyone might have come across. So in that, there is a parallel system of law which is being discussed. That system is divine law. What we talk about in law schools is positive law. Positive law is defined as laws which are enacted by the parliament or by the king, by the sovereign. So they are positive laws. Ordinarily, we consider that to be law. But in Tolstoy's God sees a truth but waits, we see that ultimately justice is done, but not by the legal system, the system of positive law. It is done by divine intervention. So that is a concept which is prevalent in the society, which is a part of the belief system of many people. And law ultimately is a belief system. Justice is a belief system. We cannot define what is just or what is justice. And this needs to be explored, this needs to be discussed. And the most important and visible forum for discussing it is literature in all its genres, in all its forms, in all its expressions. In the movies, we discuss what is justice. There are movies about crime and punishment in different ways. What type of punishment is right? What is wrong? There are movies about whether justice is done by law or not. What improvements can be there? So this is a form of discussion. This can form a very important basis of literary research. Any other question, please?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, madam.
Something related to Arka Basu's question, and you answered it also why that language of judges are so difficult to understand. One question is, where do they learn that language? You said they always need English teachers when it is very difficult for English teachers or anyone in that case. Where do they learn such a language? It is very difficult. Even to ask a question, I have to think for 5 minutes. So how I'm going to put my question? So how is it possible for them to write a judgment that very difficult to understand? And second question, sir, I'll stop with the second
Can I just
question.
answer this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am, I think, getting old and I can't process or handle too much of information. So please keep that question ready. I would love to listen to the second question also. So my first reaction about that English teachers are required for teaching language, I slightly disagree. English teachers are not required or they don't teach language. Generally, we learn language at home. Primarily, we learn language at home or perfect language at home. Second, yes, certainly, English teachers do teach literature, different nuances of language. They enrich us. And the third thing inherent in your question was, where do lawyers learn that sort of language, right? So they learn it in the law school. And who teaches? That is very interesting, not the law teachers. I am, I won't hold them guilty. They are taught, in a very strange way. Like when I talk about plain English. So some students, I'm not mentioning any specific law school or any specific colleague of mine. They tell me that our professors of law are telling us that please talk like a lawyer, write like a lawyer. So what do they mean by talk like a lawyer, write like a lawyer is write in an incomprehensible way so that people can't understand. So they pick it up. Within the first and second year, they are masters of it. And it is not that vast. It's just a register. You learn a few words and a few structures. They are not a lot. And then if you keep repeating those words, I think it will become incomprehensible for most of the people. You use long, winding sentences. So your have I answered you, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
the
One more
second one?
question, sir.
Yeah, yeah, please,
One more
welcome.
question. So you discussed about justice also when you said Portia's case also you were talking about the justice and uh, justice for those who defend well or justice for the real truth. It is not that I have to be honest, but even without people are dishonest or they do some crimes and if they defend well, they'll win the case. I'm not talking about this circumstance in the courtroom alone. Every day at home or at a workplace, we face this situation. I think everyone at that point of time, we all turn to be a lawyer and we have to defend ourselves in the situations we face every day. So, justice for those who defend well or those who know to defend well, or justice should be given to the real truth or who is really honest.
This is something which literature discusses. It's a philosophical question. Who should get the justice? What is justice? Do we deserve justice? What is the nature of justice? There is no single answer that I can think of. But as you are saying that even wrongdoers deserve justice. So this has been thought of a lot, and in the Bar Council of India's Code of Conduct, it is said that even everyone has a right to be defended by a lawyer. So if you remember the case of Ajmal Kasab, do you remember that? So many lawyers refused to represent him, but ultimately the uh, court assigned him an advocate, right? So this sounds counterintuitive to a lay person that why someone who was perceived and people believed that they knew he was a wrongdoer and he was proven to be a wrongdoer in the end, the arch villain of the times, why he was to be defended. Defended basically means represented, and representation means what that justice should be there. Even for the wrongdoer, justice should be there. And what sort of justice? It does not mean that they should be let free, but anyone, any type of villain, any type of wrongdoer, they also have many rights which are inherent. For example, human rights. They have to be defended. And it is part of the human rights that everyone should get a free and fair trial. So I hope I have
Thank
addressed
you,
your
sir.
question.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. So, Poonam madam, I think instead of going for more examples, it will be nice if we have something from the audience. If you want, I can go on, but I think now the people have had enough.
The mic has been given to all the participants if they have any doubt clarification, any questions.
While they think about anything, I would like to say that please look at literature as a multidisciplinary subject, which it is. And one thing is clear, some of you might still be doing your PhD, as I was told. Be aware of it, that, and some of you must be guiding research scholars, that PhD inherently is multidisciplinary exercise. Is there any topic which is possible? Please enlighten me if it is possible, which does not connect more than one field. Do we ever have PhD in English? Do we have PhD in science? No, we have a topic. For example, what I am talking on today, this can be a PhD topic, like multidisciplinary approaches in research on language and literature, envisioning the future. This is a topic, right? So what we are doing in this, we are dealing with a couple of concepts which are not just literature, inverted commas, just. So that is the nature of all research. We should be open to it and also to the different
So where do
methodologies.
you see like the field of this interdisciplinary research in language, in literature and the law, like in the next decade?
I see it in two places. One is extinct. The second one is it will become very much enriched by interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches. Why I'm saying extinct? Because you all have the example in front of you. How many traditional universities have the job potential now, or how many possibilities are there? Mostly the possibilities for English teachers are in law schools, in engineering colleges, technical education, management schools, right? So if they do not evolve, if they do not adapt to different needs, if they just stick to what they learned in their BA and MA courses, then I don't think that this field can remain so viable. So there, my answer again, let me rephrase it to make it more powerful, is either we change or we perish. And what is change? Change is we have to connect. We have to connect with different fields. And I am not just talking, I have done this. Like the syllabus of Bar Council of India was revised by me in 2009 or 10. So that is something which, if you are teaching in law schools, you are using it as a model syllabus. And what I did in that was I connected law and literature, law and communication, law and language in this. So in whichever field you are, you should try to connect literature with your field. And the main point in today's talk was that every single field is connected with literature. Literature is a reflection of life, life of the individual, and life of the individual in the society. And what all different specializations do if they have to be useful. They are basically talking about these two things, about the individual or about the individual in the society. So literature is used everywhere.
Thank you for mentioning
Literature
literature
itself.
itself is multidisciplinary. Because we are trying to connect with literature with other fields, and it's good to hear that literature itself is multidisciplinary, so that it will be a new perspective. We can look, we'll try to link more, find out other disciplines in literature also. Thank you, sir. Thank you for mentioning this.
Thank you. And before Dr. Poonam says, can I add that we are using a specific methodology called as doctrinal methodology and literature studies, literary studies. But the world is moving towards, uh, you know, quantitative studies, empirical studies. So that is very much possible. And I've always encouraged my students to do empirical studies in literature also. It is possible, and I think that is what the future is moving towards, indicating. And that is what I see people in the world working. I am not saying that doctrinal studies should be disconnected totally, discontinued totally, but we have to be aware of new approaches in literary research. Yes, Dr. Poonam.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for clarifying and asking us to change and look into other perspective as well.
And there are many, many other literary pieces we can talk of as examples, like Saki. Saki is written, and one of his stories is a favorite of mine, the story of the background. So there we can look at the legal concepts. Likewise, the autobiography of M.K. Gandhi that you can look at. In that autobiography, he has talked about his legal practice. So that is again something at the intersection of autobiography and law. So we have many instances around us. The focus today was law. That is why I think this might be of help to people, as I have indicated that law can be connected with different aspects of literature and literature with different aspects of law.
Sir, one more concern that I have. I'm sorry to interrupt in between. Just wanted to ask you, do you see lately that in cinematic texts in India, specifically films and web series and TV series, there is a resurgence of legal narratives? I mean, since the post-millennial time after 2000, I mean, on multiple OTT platforms and independent movie makers, they are taking up law very seriously. I mean, the rendition of law that was there in the 90s and the rendition of law that is there now, they're very different from each other. I mean, it's more nuanced, it's more akin to the discourse. Do you feel so as well? I mean, like seeing legal discourse from up close.
Well, uh, if I have to be diplomatic, I would say I agree. But if I have to be realistic, I would say I agree and disagree both. So
Tell us a
my
bit more
perspective,
about
yeah,
the passage. Yeah.
my perspective is that law has always been a very, very important human intellectual preoccupation. And this preoccupation is basically with the concept of justice. And law is just a ladder to justice. A moment. Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry. Yes.
So, no, it's fine. I really appreciate that you have found time even during your work day. So, justice is a very major preoccupation of human beings, and it is debated. And when you are just debating, when like we are talking to each other, it does not become literature as it is as such. But if it is written also, or if it is depicted artistically, it becomes literature. So this depiction of law is universal and eternal, according to me. And different challenges as they come, we try to tackle them because now in law, a lot of new challenges are there. With every change in technology, big new legal challenges are there. New societal challenges are there. New existential problems are there. For example, the concept of privacy, I think that is going to become the new frontier of law because technologically there is nothing like privacy now. In your cell phone, in my cell phone, I think some app might be hearing us all the while or recording us, even videographing us. So I will give you an example like any recorded conversation. If you record someone secretively, it is not admissible as such in the courts. So some changes the law is making, and technical evidence is not binding on the court, even according to the new BNS and BNSS, etc. Sorry, please unmute yourself.
Sorry, sir. Even
Uh,
with the AI intervention, it's becoming more complicated where the generation is there, right? The voice generation, the morphing, and deep fake, all these things coming in. It's becoming more challenging, yes.
it will transform everything. AI
Hmm.
is something that will transform the legal concepts, literature, everything
Yes,
will
sir.
be transformed.
Yes.
Our morality will have to evolve. It is evolving, it is changing. Evolving does not mean positive or negative. It is a neutral word according to me. It is evolving and it is simply responding to the changing environment, which is technical environment, which is social environment, legal environment.
Thank you so much, sir. It's very nice input.
Thanks for your wonderful question, sir.
And
Well, thank you so much for your interactive and very interesting session. It was very insightful on inherent multidisciplinarity in language and literature research. Your expertise in blending the law and language, all these blending and interconnectedness has provided us with valuable perspective on how these all discipline intersect and inform each other in a profound way. Thank you so much, sir,
Thank you.
for finding time for us.
I think I still have some time. And this is another
Sure,
question,
sir.
if you allow
Sure,
me.
sir.
I
Sure, sir.
really see, ladies and gentlemen, we have to look at teaching in a slightly different way. This is what I do in my classes also. I don't go there with any, fixed agenda. So in FDPs, we can start experimenting with this. They should be like discussions, talking. There are a lot of things I would like to share with you, but they can only be on demand. They can only be in the flow of the moment. So we had some very interesting questions, and I think the questions were more interesting than what I was doing without the questions. So there is another question now. Someone is saying, sir, you were talking about plain English movement, but it is more of Latin and legal English, makes it difficult to understand the syllabus of law schools, more Eurocentric, Latinized. That is true, certainly, but even in our Indian languages, for example, in the Hindi-speaking states, Hindi is used. In Tamil Nadu, Tamil is used in the lower courts, right? In all states, regional languages are there in the lower courts and in some high courts also. So the problem is same again. The question is not very clear to me, but again, you were talking about plain English movement. So this plain English movement, and in the same breath, I talked about plain language movement. So it is not only plain English, but plain language also. But at the moment, we are using a Western legal system in English language. So what you are asking, that is also true. The syllabus of law school must more Eurocentric, Latinized. Yes, it is. It is certainly because that is the basic paradigm in which we are functioning. But the government is talking about, it has brought about new legislations to, and with an avowed aim of Indianizing law. So I think things will change. It will not be just Eurocentric, but the influences will remain because of our past, recent past, and also because of globalization, and also because all the good things from across the world we should take. It should not be that we have to use only what is indigenous without any concern for its utility. But there are a lot of things which were suppressed, very many good concepts. I think they will surface with time. Have I answered you? I am not sure. Ms. Priya has asked this question. And there is a link. I don't know about this link. What is this link about?
It said that link is for the feedback form.
Okay, I will also try to give. Thank you very much. So I think formal closings have taken place. Thanks a lot for the wonderful words. If there is anything else, that will be my pleasure. You can even write to me. Let me put my email there, right?
That would be lovely, sir. We can always reach out to you and even the participants.
It's for the participants. You already have it.
I have, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you.
Bye bye. Good day.
Bye, sir.